After avoiding the death chamber twice in 14 years, Robert Pruett is granted yet another down-to-the-wire stay of execution for the murder of prison guard Daniel Nagel.
Has a fourth execution date been set yet?
Not to my knowledge, no.
This time, the murder weapon, a homemade prison shank, is tested again for DNA.
We're continuing to try to get the DNA. We're continuing to try to get it more testing done and to have an independent expert come in and review the data.
Pruett's attorneys and the Texas Innocence Network working on his behalf are not speaking publicly during the appeal. But criminal defense attorney Mike Cavaluzzi, who agreed to look at this case for Crime Watch Daily, makes this shocking revelation. The lack of DNA evidence is surprisingly not good news for the man on death row.
What's important here is that if an expert finds no DNA on the blade, Robert Pruett is out of luck. It's meaningless to him. What the defense needs is for the blade to have the DNA of someone else so that they could show that somebody else committed the crime.
Pruett was not convicted on any physical evidence, but on the testimony of 5 inmates who were reportedly offered incentives to take the stand.
The testimony was conflicted. The testimony was essentially purchased. The witnesses got better deals, time off their parole, and were given incentives, basically, to testify here. Most juries are told, when a judge instructs them on the law, that one of the things that they should consider in determining the credibility of a witness is whether they had a motive to lie and also whether they've been convicted of crimes. Most of these people have been convicted of crimes and have motives to lie.
What were they given in return?
Different things. They were all kinds of special treatment. They were given parole recommendations, transfers to other prisons and where they could be closer to their home state, home. All this was brought before the jury.
And other complications could merit a closer look into the case. Della Nagel, sister of the murdered prison guard, says she has no idea if Pruett is the killer. And there are signs it could have been someone else.
He told me about the death threats that he was getting, letters in his locker at work, phone calls, hang-ups.
Daniel Nagel was also the local president of the Prison Workers Union and was on a campaign to clean things up at the prison.
He said in a speech to the governor that they needed more prison guards and they needed better hours and pay, and that somebody was going to get hurt, somebody was going to die because they didn't have enough people to cover the shifts. And so there were people that were alone. About 2 weeks later was when he was killed. There was talk that he was left alone on purpose.
But what about that disciplinary report that was ripped up next to him?
If I ripped it up, there was a palm print on there, but it wasn't mine.
So whose skin cells are on that report?
That's a good question. They ran it through the database and couldn't find a match.
But anyone who's behind bars would obviously have their prints and their palm prints on file.
Not the officers.
The prison has not commented on the allegations, but the Texas Observer newspaper also reported that the prison officials had warned Nagel that he was on a hit list being circulated by a prison gang. Only weeks after the murder, a number of officers in the unit were indicted for colluding with inmates to traffic drugs.
What needs to be done for Daniel's case? What needs to be done to help free you if you are an innocent man?
I think that they need to take a look at them officers that worked there a little closer, especially the ones who were a part of the investigation, the ones that were indicted, the ones that were linked to criminal activity going on there.
But those questions remain unanswered.
It really would have required the jury to ignore a lot of really important evidence that somebody else killed Daniel Nagel and not Robert Pruett.
And every stay of execution could well be Pruett's last.
It's a sad, sad case. Unfortunately, this last-ditch effort by the defense, I do think, will be his last chance. And I hate to say this, I am an eternal optimist, but I don't think it's going to work. I think at best, they'll find no DNA evidence on the blade of that shank, and that's simply not going to be enough to save Robert Pruett's life.
Some families of victims are all for seeing the accused pay the ultimate price. Della Nagel feels differently.
It's not going to make my family whole again, but it is going to make his family not whole.
Whatever the odds, Pruett remains one of the calmest characters on death row.
Having those dates loom around you has got to be difficult.
It is, but you know, I look at it like this. It's a great opportunity. It's a great challenge. It keeps me in the moment. I don't plan for...
You don't plan for the future.
I don't plan for anything. I got right now.
But the man whose murder conviction put his 15-year-old son on the road to the death house says he only has one wish, that he could go back in time and leave that knife on the kitchen counter.
And I give my life for Roberts. They can execute me and not him. I'm the one that deserves it, not him. That's 2 murders that he ain't good for either one of them. And I believe that with all my heart.
Have you thought about what your last words would be?
Not really, but if it ever comes to that, it would be something positive. Hopefully that this practice can be done away with sooner or later, you know, and that I believe life's about learning and growing, and that hopefully people can learn and grow from my life.
Pruett's attorneys continue to hope for a new trial, but they do say that the chances are not great. As of right now, a new execution date has not been set.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Now, since 1973, 156 people have been released from death row after they were found innocent of their crimes, and that includes the headline-making case of Deborah Milkey, who was last year released after spending 22 years behind bars. For her story, you can go to our website, crimewatchdaily.com.